Send me a message in. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to have all you here with us in this first meeting of the High-Rise Living and Inclusive City Symposium. In my name and in behalf of Professor Christian Montés and all the co-coordinator of the project from the University of Lyon, and also in the behalf of all the researchers of the project, we welcome all of you in the session, and we want to express also our appreciation and thanks both to the main agents that supported the project, FAPESP and ANR, National Agents of Research in France. And particularly, we also want to thank the support that we received from both universities, from IAU, Instituto de Arquitetura e Urbanismo at USP in São Carlos, and also from the University of Lyon. To open the symposium, we will have listen to some words of some of the responsible, both for the institute and the university. And immediately then, therefore, I give the word to Professor Gilbert Lanche, the Dean of the Institute of Architecture and Urbanism at Universidade de São Paulo. Professor Gilbert, thank you for being with us, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Bom dia a todos. Importante e oportuno recebê-los aqui para esse simpósio internacional. Um desdobramento do projeto de pesquisa entre o Instituto de Arquitetura e Urbanismo da Universidade de São Paulo e o Instituto de Pesquisas Geográficas da Universidade de Lyon 2. Agradeço o trabalho que vocês vêm desenvolvendo e o trabalho que resulta também agora nesse simpósio internacional, com questões importantes ligadas à verticalização das cidades e, sobretudo, não só a verticalização, mas ao que essa verticalização promove no entorno a elas, nas grandes cidades, e o entorno a elas como práticas socioespaciais. Eu acho que é uma questão de grande relevo, que está sendo pesquisada e agora debatida aqui hoje com a participação de outras importantes instituições nacionais e internacionais, e a todas elas, a FEFELESH em São Paulo, a UFBA, a Universidade Nacional do Litoral Argentina, a Universidade Nacional de Córdoba, a Universidade de Sevilha. Eu parabenizo pelo trabalho, dou as boas-vindas ao nosso instituto e desejo uma ótima sessão de trabalho ao longo desses próximos alternados 15 dias que vocês vão ter de trabalho. Muito obrigado e um bom trabalho a todos.
Thank you, Professor Gilbert. Thank you. Professor Etienne Coussard, please. Professor Etienne, please.
Okay. Well, good morning or good afternoon to everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here on the behalf of the entire Environnement Ville Société Laboratory. I'm very pleased to open this symposium. It marks the end of a fruitful collaboration on an exciting topic, accelerated verticalization of contemporary metropolises. And you know, geography research in Lyon has a great tradition on urban issues, so that it is a pleasure to share our experience with Brazilian partners, and that it is well exemplified by the Highrise project. In that way, many researchers of Environnement Ville Société were involved in this program, and I am particularly glad to see that excellent PhD theses are about to be defended. Of course, I only regret that we cannot welcome you here in Lyon, where we also have a great tradition of hospitality. In any case, I wish you very stimulating scientific discussions, and of course, I hope that such partnership can continue in the near future. So have a great afternoon, have a great morning, it depends where you are, and of course, have great discussions on fruitful discussions on this exciting topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Etienne. Professor Karin, please.
Good morning or good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I am honored to participate in this opening session. 15 months ago, when Professor Manoel received the grant from the Prorectory of Research to realize the symposium, we could never have imagined that now in 2021, we would be in the middle of a pandemic, and this would be an online event. And as an online event, it even has the potential to reach more participants than before. So I'm glad that despite all the difficulties of the moment, you all managed to organize this Highrise Symposium. I would like to congratulate Professor Manoel, Professor Christian Montés, Professor Etienne Cossart, and all people involved in the organization. You made it possible and you did a great job. So looking at the website and the program, I can say that the next couple of days will be engaging and an opportunity to deepen the discussions you have already been having regarding the verticalization and the production of the urban space of many cities around the world. This event unfolded from a binational research project, and this research was supported by FAPESP and by the University of São Paulo, and it's a partnership between Institute of Architecture and University of Lyon. And also other people from other institutions are involved. The University of Sevilla, Universidade Nacional do Litoral from Argentina, Universidade Nacional do Córdoba from Argentina, other universities from Brazil, UFBA and USP, and also other colleagues from other research groups from IAU. And I would like to emphasize that this collaboration is one of the goals of the Research Commission, to promote the internationalization and the collaboration between external and internal research groups. So it's also great to see the active participation of undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate students. So finally, I would like to say welcomed or bem-vindos, bem-vindas. I'm sure these days will be great, and I hope you enjoy the Highrise Symposium. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Karin, and thank you, all the three of you, for your kind words, and I hope we will have a nice days of work. So, Professor Christian Montés, please, would you like to comment also a little bit, just to close the opening session, please?
Yes, thank you very, very much for hosting us, even if it is only, with brackets, a video conference. I know that a lot of work has been done on the Brazilian side just to enable that that video conference. 5 days of video conference, which is a very, very long time, even if it is not continuous in the week, which will enable people just to discuss with the comments part of it, which is also very important, and also the fact that it is live, which means that people who were not able to attend will be able then to watch the YouTube channels later. So it is even better on some respects than a live event, because people from all around the world, as one of the people said before, will be able to do that. So I really thank very, very much the University of São Paulo, the Institute of, I cannot remember the translation, but well, the IAE of the university, and all the people involved for their continuous support to enable that at moment in which we will just partake with all we thought, all we discovered, all we were not able to do, what we were not able to do and to do. So thank you so much. Now I give the floor back to Professor Manoel Alves, without whom nothing would have been possible today.
Oh, come on.
So.
No. Thank you, but all of us are involved and we did the same. I also, it will not be possible without you also. So, again, I thank you, all of you. I thank Professor Gilbert Lancha, Professor Etienne Cossard, and Professor Karin Chavatal for being with us in this opening session. And I hope you can stay with us and enjoy. We know that it will be very most likely nobody will be able to attend and watch all the sessions, considering our agenda. But as Professor Christian just said, the videos will be available at the YouTube channel from IAU, and they will be there. Later, we will add the videos also with subtitles and leave it available for everybody. That's one of the main objectives that we have, and to leave it open to the public. Well, then what we will do now, we both of us, myself and Professor Christian Montés, will introduce the Highrise project. We will introduce some of the developments of the Highrise, some of the questions, and we will split the presentation. So it should be, okay, here it is. We will be presenting some of the hypotheses, premises, and aspects of the development of the project. And then we will inform you also about some of the results that will be available in the Symposium's page for you to look at. And this is, it's a comment about, it's important to point out that we met for the first time, myself and Professor Christian Montés, back in November 2013, in the first International Research Symposium organized by USP and Lyon 2, University of Lyon. There were some groups of investigators in that event. Then there was another event in 2014, again, research symposium, but that time in 2014 here in São Paulo at USP. And from these two meetings, we developed a proposal that the first time we submitted it to the International FAPESP ANR call, it was well evaluated, but we didn't get the grant. So we made some refinements, made some adjustments, we presented it in the second year, and then we got the grant. And now we are finishing this 4-year project. That it came from, independently of the questions of verticalization and the issues of verticalization or vertical urbanism would be better. It also considers some premises related to the contemporary city as we see it. How do we understand what parameters are present in the configuration of the city, and particularly how the urban space is produced, and more particularly, how vertical urbanism, how high rises, what role do they play in this context, in this environment that usually articulates the state and stakeholders, the state and private agents. Then, for us, a premise that we wanted to study since the beginning is to what extent this statement can be sustained, in the sense that residential high-rises are more than architectural solutions, architectural buildings, or just more than buildings nowadays. That they are also commodities of a particular strategy of reproduction of the urban space as a business, a productive element and a condition of capital reproduction. With that understanding, some cornerstones of our goals, of our intentions, are also important to point out. That we wanted to look at high rises, look at vertical urbanism with a de-westernized gaze. We didn't want to get involved in the same trap. In other words, to take into account the local political, economic, and cultural context, and therefore taking a step aside of the usual Western way of analyzing cities and the urban space, and being a little bit ambitious and trying to go a little bit further, also to work towards a decolonizing of urban theory and urban studies. We were very well aware that the issue of decolonization is nothing new. It started already quite some years ago, but to our understanding, and Professor Christian Montés will develop it, these are issues that are not properly considered in architectural and geographical studies. So, with this view, trying to develop a perspective that allows going beyond just developmentalist concepts such as globalization, and with the firm belief that residential high-rises processes vertical urbanism reveal different types of local global negotiations in the making of the new liberal city. That's something that for us is also important. We are under a new liberal city. It's under this framework that, having focused São Paulo and Lyon, having the focus in São Paulo and Lyon, not with the intention to compare the two cities because they are not comparable, is that the project investigates aspects of vertical urbanism based on a specific axis and scales of analysis, and also cross-referencing methodological procedures that considers both territorial, social, and spatial analysis, and end up developing ethnographical approaches and critical cartographies. To us, since the beginning, the Highrise project should be a transdisciplinary work that address these issues: vertical urbanism and inclusiveness. We will see that the focus on inclusive will change along the project, but at the beginning, as the name of the project, High-Rise Living and Inclusive City, it was there. Everything related and based on the logical production of the contemporary city, observing singularities and similarities of each own place. As I said, the aim of the project has never been to compare metropolitan areas, because we believe that this would lead to numerous theoretical, methodological, and practical issues. No. But we need to put them into perspective as instance of the way local societies are reworking global processes. Just to finish, so what we had in mind and what we investigated along these years of research is directly related to the global process of neoliberal governances, these hegemonic processes that defines and determines similar spatial conditions, but the conditions that also have their own singularities, as well as, if any, the transformations in the sense of urbanity, inclusiveness, urban equity, and in the public-private relation of right living, of vertical living. In the scenario, we have the conviction that that enabled us to select case studies. But it's important to mention that not on the merits of any hypothetical and elusive similarity or comparativeness, but on the only condition that they, case studies, are participating in the processes we are studying. I will stop now and give the word to Professor Christian Montés, that will develop more about the Highrise project, its context, its hypothesis, and aspects of its development. And later I will finish with some more words. I believe I have to stop the screen, right? Let me come here.
Mine is here. Okay. I think, thank you. Thank you. I will now go to explain in more detail what were the premises of our project, what we intended to do. And as you are going to see, we were really very, very, very ambitious at the beginning. And you will see during the week and next week if we fulfilled what we intended to do at the beginning. Indeed, some things no, but some other things we didn't intend to do, we did. So it's always the same with these projects. So the context, Manoel Alves already talked about that. It was officially born in 2017 as a joint research program financed by the ANR on the French side and the FAPESP on the Brazilian one, and so sustained on mostly two institutions, USP on the Brazilian side and the University of Lyon and Lyon 2 mostly on the French side, plus the research lab. You saw his director, Professor Cossard. This explains the two major cases we studied, which are São Paulo on the one side and Lyon on the other side, not on the merits of comparability, but also because it's a Franco-Brazilian paid for by French on the one side and the state of São Paulo on the other one. And also what is interesting to add is that the urban planning agencies of both cities are part of the project, not as big as a part as we expected, but well, they are part of the project because we didn't want it to be only an academic project. It's very good to be an academic project, indeed, we wouldn't say anything else, but we wanted to ground it a little more into planning and the making of the cities. And it came also after a previous ANR program, which was only French, which explained why London has been chosen as some sort of counterpoint to the two major case studies, because we already had some knowledge on London, which was the main focus with Lyon of the first research project, and we learned a lot on already on what high rises were. So that begins to explain the contours of the project and the cases that have been mostly studied. So the context was that residential high-rises were a neglected field of investigation. We found by looking at all what was available, literature which was available on the subject, and there is a quotation by Hewitt and Graham made seven years ago. Critical social science has long prioritized a flat, planar, or horizontal imaginary of urban space over a volumetrical or vertical one. And we wanted to go to the vertical one, not because we thought that vertical living was absolutely different from horizontal living, but we had the assumption that there were differences. And we'll talk tomorrow when we will touch the first findings tomorrow morning, just to sort out what that means. Because indeed the high-rise living theme was gaining momentum, but had not been studied in a comprehensive way through the analysis of the interaction between built form, lifestyles, and practices in the urban environment with transdisciplinary approaches. The approaches had mostly been disciplinary ones, and so what had been studied was the technical aspects of building high with wings and so on, constructions, the economic aspects, health issues, sustainability, and mostly in Asian countries. Not only, indeed, there were studies in South America already and in Europe, but there were not a lot of them. So mostly Asia, and historically the main focus was on social high-rises, which drew a lot of attention by sociologists, mostly for social sciences, because of the evils of that was about social high-rises. And so what we intended to do was to increase scientific exchanges, as well to enrich the production of knowledge concerning the verticalization of urbanization. And to do that, we had a research question and a social question, which were both, when I say social question, is also an urban question or a planning question, or so. And so the question we put in our proposal was, what capacity is left to produce an inclusive city in a context where regulatory capitalism and entrepreneurial municipalities are participating in the promotion, to a large extent, of urbanization processes with favorable conditions for developers to control the urban space, in which residential high-rises tend to separate, to segregate, instead of including people and places. And so this is on the academic part of the project, but included is also indeed the major social question: what capacity is left to produce an inclusive city? Because it is grounded in one theoretical reference about Lefebvre and the people after Lefebvre, indeed, of the right to the city. And so the social and planning question, which was linked to the first one, was the necessity to improve social housing policy, the provision of public spaces, and improving the capacity of the contemporary city to live together, where the contemporary citizens to live together mostly. A city doesn't live per se. So these were the two questions we wanted to answer. So when I said we were very ambitious, you know how much we were ambitious. And there were questions underlying our research, and then hypotheses. And I will first dwell through the major question underlying our research, with a lot of different dimensions. the methodology was transdisciplinary, so we didn't want to stick only to architecture on the one side and geography to the other, to take, well, Manoel or Alves on the one side and me on the other side, for instance. So there were economic and political dimensions. So why is a transnational financial capital in urban transformation areas of cities like São Paulo or European metropolises basically guided towards mostly residential high-rise real estate development, because we had seen a switch from office high-rises to residential high-rises, and we wanted to document that more than the usual suspects like New York, or New York, where there are these needles, high needles, which are 300-400 meter high needles, with very luxurious apartments which are built, and elsewhere in global metropolises. So we wanted to also document that in lesser known metropolises, like Lyon, for instance. The political question was, what capacity has the planning system of ensuring inclusiveness in the process? Well, it speaks per se. Social, cultural, and symbolical. What are the evolution of the image of residential high-rises in a long-term analysis and the social values attached to them? What is the role of high-rise living lifestyles created by developers, investors, and architects? And what are the narratives that are produced about domestic, private, and public space in new developments, to compare them with previous ones, the one attached, for instance, to high-rise social housing, or to low-rise expensive housing, for instance. So, which creates different lifestyles and different narratives. So we wanted to see, and also the effect of that on the people. Okay, and the first question was just how to define high-rise buildings and high-rise living, because the very definition of the topic after these questions was absolutely grounding the research. So the definitions are really very not simple ones, as you see. There are a lot too many lines on my slides, but so the definitions are encompassing questions of living in community and sharing space, verticalization. So it's about the social part of the subject, verticalization of the living environment, which is more social spatial, or verticalization as a process or verticalized form. So it is a multifaceted way of looking at high-rise buildings and living. And because the residential high-rise can be considered as a place for living, but also a commodity. So it's a specific spatial form, which is a consequence of planning and socio-economic aspiration from a selection of actors with varying degree of inclusiveness, different scales of intervention, different strategies in liberal contexts of governance and planning, with the stigmatization and high-rise with social housing or luxury housing, new typologies, social exclusion, inclusion within space. So it's very wide, and in the scales and the context. And in return, it's also a spatial form that has consequences for inclusiveness at different scales, inside, outside, and how it relates to the rest of the city. So we wanted to, high-rise living is also something which is inside a flat, inside a building, and the relationship between the flat and outside, the building and outside, and the flat, the building, and the outside, which we will see how we did, what methodology we just used to search for answers. And it's also a fully social space and territory, hosting as many individual trajectories as experiences, emotions, and movements. Well, all in all, we also had a working definition of what a high-rise building, a residential high-rise building is. For us, it's something which sticks out or is clustered. And so we chose a definition of 10 stories or 30 meter high. So it's not very high, but in a lot of countries it stands out very much with 10 stories. For instance, in France, where we often, very rarely go above 5 or 6 stories, so when you have a 10-story, and indeed in a city like São Paulo, it's not like that, but it's mostly clusters of quite high-rise residential buildings. And then I don't know why it is in the middle, so I think it's I made a mistake in my PowerPoint, well, in my presentation. So back to the questions. So it's major question number 2. There are also 4 dimensions. So what does high-rise living mean in contemporary metropolitan areas in terms of experience, representations, and participation? How are residential high-rise buildings lived in and out between internal public and domestic spaces, the wider neighborhood and the city beyond? Theoretical. We wanted to re-inject our case studies in the urban theories to deepen and root the analysis of inclusiveness around the notion of democracy, accessibility, living together in the contemporary city, and we will add others after. So, because high-rise living is a way of being a citizen of the city, as is another way of living, indeed. But and we also wanted to touch, is there some sort of other politics inside these buildings? And to tackle these questions, we had some hypotheses, because indeed, even if not a lot has been written on high-rise living, a lot has been written on living in cities and living in metropolises, and also some things have been written on high-rise residential high-rises. So putting all that together, we had some hypotheses. So we first thought that studying the global processes of metropolitan verticalization in different contexts through case studies would enable us to document and grow theoretical proposition, because they reveal different types of local, global negotiations in the making of the neoliberal thesis. We, as Manoel will say, we will study. We intended to study residential high-rises at different scales. We'll dwell upon that. And also in Lyon and São Paulo, high-rise developments are targeting inner city areas and areas of gentrification, mostly. So it's no more social housing, as in Europe, for instance, but it's mostly high-end high-rises now. Economic and political residential high-rises beyond housing solutions are becoming a commodity in an increasingly financialized real estate market and a lever for municipalities to achieve the compact city model. So it's on the planning side on the one side, and also on the financial side on the other. So we really wanted to document the financialization of because the financialization of office buildings is quite well known, but the financialization of residential high-rises, except in metropolises like New York City, in which they are quite documented, or London less, or Tokyo, but in lesser known metropolises in which the financialization processes are different. Well, this was our hypothesis, and I will not spill the beans by saying that we were quite right. Other underlying hypotheses were that the imaginaries and representation of the residential high-rises are ambiguous and interrelated with past representations, which are influencing current representations and planning strategies. The stigmatization of modernist high-rise housing project, for instance, is something to overcome when developers want, or municipalities want, to sell, at least in some parts of the world, new residential high-rises, even if they are very posh, because of the bad image of the social housing high-rises, which are, at the same time as the new ones are being erected, are just demolished. So you have a very negative image on the one side and a very positive on the other. But it's difficult to adjust sometimes. And also, by means of sophisticated design and selective urban planning, they promote a high standard of consumption that is representative of ascending social groups that are searching new lifestyles. So it's a way also of another way of studying gentrification processes in major cities through the way it translates into a discourse or the longing for new lifestyles, central city lifestyle, but also views and so on and so on. We will see that. And indeed, this creates new spatialities. Instead of just gentrifying already existing parts of the city, this is the creation of new parts of the city. Indeed, in the processes, well-known process of segregation, gentrification, inclusion or exclusion, but also all the nuances in between. We didn't want to portray a city or cities in black and white, just on the one side, the poor, on the other side, the rich, and in between, nothing. Well, in some part of some cities, this might be quite true, but not everywhere and not always. High-rises are working as an enclave or interface. It might have been. And also new sociabilities might also reveal the substitution of class social division by lifestyle divisions. This was a hypothesis. Sociopolitical, possible new ways of inhabiting, living the city, or old ones transformed or renewed, promotes transformation in the relationships in the city and have to be addressed to enable the possibility of the inclusive city with the participation of residents. This was quite, might be perhaps a little bit far-fetched to say that this is also the vertical living is also the creation of a new way of living the city and a new relationship, new political, new way of being a citizen of the city, or renew old ways. So that was the hypothesis. So there were some cool notions and concepts, so I will not dwell upon them a lot because they will be reworked during all the sessions, indeed, and in the conclusion of the symposium next week. But so vertical urbanism is really one word. You see, it's a process. And it's not only an urban form, but it's a new form of urbanism, or we just think it is, or it might be. Well, in São Paulo it already is, and in some other cities it might be a new way of urbanism, and the relationship indeed with horizontal. So it's not only vertical per se and only vertical, but the relationship between the horizontal plane and the vertical one. Inclusiveness, indeed, which was one of the core notion with urban equity, and Manoel will also talk more about it. Financialization, which really was very important. You saw, well, you heard it in my previous comments. Lifestyles, I already talked a lot about that. Segregation, gentrification, and representation. So all that put together is also a way of understanding what vertical urbanism is. And so, how did we think we would just do that? We devised 4 different tasks at the beginning, and you see the time lapse. Everything should have been finished in 2019, when we are in 2021, and it's not entirely finished now, but well, we were very optimistic at the time. So further diagnosis, spatial temporal assessment of residential high-rises at 2 scales, well, building and regulating residential high-rise building in the neoliberal city, then representation and imaginaries of the residential high-rise, past, present, and trajectories, and then the last one would have been living the high-rise, new urban spaces, new lifestyles. So you see, and here, well, I do not have to go very deeper. It's two scales, Brazil and Europe, and Sao Paulo and Lyon, the spatial temporal assessment. These were the two scales, which were continental or subcontinental, and then at city scale. And then building and regulating, it was between socio-technical solution community, and then public and private interest, and then narratives, changing narratives, contemporary narratives, and then social interactions and separation of the high-rise development and participation and engagement in the community. So these were the tasks that we intended to work on. And then there were also some academic practitioners workshop, because we, as I said, first, the urban agencies of both cities in Sao Paulo and Lyon were to be involved in the project, and then there were to be theoretical workshops and conferences. So these were the task. And when you look at the sessions of the symposium, these are the results compared to the initial dream. So, well, the major focus was on the living side, mostly, even if we also addressed mostly on the Brazilian side the financialization processes of that. On the French side, it was far more difficult because we didn't have access to all the data. We had some, but not too many. So the major focus was on the living side. So that's why the four sessions of the symposiums are living. Two are about living the vertical city. First, urban types and socio-spatial changes, and then daily life and social practices. So you see changes, and then producing the vertical city is mostly on financialization, capital and state, and then it's also something which came along, especially on the Brazilian side, but not only. It is the diverse ways of reading the vertical city, which were enabled by field studies, by photographic reportage, and so on, by all the work that has been done, and so which just induced a lot of cartographies, narratives, infographics, which is another way of doing the project, and we'll dwell upon tomorrow, and every person who will present something, find some findings on the project, will dwell upon that also. The way looking at the vertical city also enabled us to broaden the ways of all the different types of narratives, which might be cartographies, of mapping, as Manoel says. And I think I will stop there because I did already talk too much. Thank you. And give the floor to Manoel once again.
Okay, Christian, thank you. I'll come back sharing my screen. Is everything okay? My screen is back. I believe so, no?
Yeah, it seems.
So, as Professor Christian explained, we were ambitious at the beginning of the project. And I think that was a good thing, to be ambitious, and in a certain way, we knew most likely that we would not be able to achieve maybe all the goals that we had. And I think that being ambitious was really important to get where we got. Also because, for instance, the pandemic was a real problem. Most of the field work that we would develop in the Brazilian side, because of the schedule that we had prepared, we didn't do. They were planned. We did the first one in late January, early February last year, and the second one was planned to June, and the third one for September, October. It didn't work. So we didn't get everything that we expected, and that's also why the project was postponed a little bit more. Anyway, the framework that Professor Montés explained, when we start the work, we start the project, we said, okay, how do we go? How do we work? How do we develop analysis that are related to an, let's say, object of study, one building and its surroundings in different cities? Lyon, São Paulo, and possibly other cities, as we will see in some of the communications in the different sessions. So we established that the project would have 5 scales. The first 2, the continental ones and the regional ones, we used an international database, Highrise, to produce, and then that were related to analysis, for instance, in Europe or South America and its capitals, and in Brazilian metropolitan regions, and also in European regions, that allowed us to start to understand the process as a whole. For instance, these are some images, some results, some graphics from initial results of the project using Highrise database related to the temporality of tall buildings in Europe along the years. This one is another one, an example also in Europe, where you see, in terms of the modes, the units of territorial analysis, in different periods, chronological years, the evolutions or the decrease of tall buildings in morphological urban areas, and what trend did it present. Similarly, we did some similar things in Brazil using the same database, the Highrise, and that's just another example based on the counting of the high-rise buildings. High-rise for us, we decided we took the definition of buildings with more than 10 stories or more than 30 meters. This could be developed. We were able to develop the first 2 scales in a very similar way, using the same database. But then, when you go to the local, when you go to the intra-urban scale of analysis, when you go to the building itself and its surroundings, then it was a different problem, a really different problem. And also because we wanted to develop, I wouldn't call it a methodology, but a set of procedures of reading territorial units of analysis that could be replicated to other cities, that could, as a process of reading urban areas, metropolitan areas, and having some indexes or common indexes of analysis could be used to other cities. That was our goal since the beginning. And then, as Professor Montés said, because of the availability of data, we developed that basically to São Paulo, this set of procedures of reading, but having in mind and keeping the objective to develop a set of procedures that could be used for other cities also. So we needed a common index, a common universal index, not only one related to the number of buildings built in a certain period of time, but social and economical indexes that could be used. We need a common one that could be used to everybody And then each one of us would use it, or would develop the use of it according to its particularities, according to, for instance, the census data that is developed in each country or in each area, and so on. Therefore, we chose the IDI, no, as this common index, and we decided to use three of its parameters: life expectancy, income, and education. To do so, we observed three dimensions. We realized that three dimensions were necessary to be checked: the aggregation criteria, the homogeneous zones, in other words, the territorial units of analysis, and the procedures, the level of replicability in different scales and in places, based on the IGH criteria. What it means, it meant that it was necessary to understand the differences, even if choosing these three criteria parameters as common parameters, we need to understand the criteria that was used to each one of these parameters in different places. And that's what we did. So we understood what difference are, what are the distinctions in IDH in Brazil and France and so on. And it would be necessary to be done also for other cities or other countries. The second thing, and this proved to be much more difficult, as I already, Professor Montés mentioned, and I repeated, because of the territorial units of analysis, for instance, the communities in Lyon and Great Lyon, and the availability of data about these units of analysis. In fact, it was related to the geographical scales of analysis of these, okay, what we decided to call territorial units of analysis. What this table shows you, are some differences between, let's say, the three major cities studied in the Highrise project, remembering that London had already been object of the Skyline project, São Paulo, Lyon, and London. And how, when we get mainly from here, from the intra-urban scale to the building scale to the real estate environment, the data that we need. Once we had a Brazilian database, a good one, to São Paulo, we bought it, we acquired it, EMBRA-ESP database, and used it to develop the set of procedures of reading territorial units of analysis that come. We had the data, we had the availability, we could do it. São Paulo has more than 15,000 high-rise buildings. So how do we choose one? It's, as mentioned before by a lot of us, it was not a matter of comparing both cities, São Paulo and Lyon, but we studied according to certain parameters and with certain goals. What we'll get back tomorrow, in the session tomorrow morning, we will not develop it here, is detailing how we did it, how we went through what we did, what difficulties we had, what challenges we were faced with. The image you see is a result of almost the final result of this process of reading the city of São Paulo, reading, placing, identifying areas of more verticalization. And what you see here is the whole combination. The gray lines, what you see behind the gray lines, are the territorial units of analysis defined by the municipality that also take into account parameters of IDH. And what you see in different colors are the ones that present, or from 1985 to 2019, a more strong verticalization process. But we realized that was not enough, and then we had to develop other tools to understand and to refine this set of procedures. And after investigating and making some tests, we decided to superimpose a statistical grid of 400 by 400. And then the squares that you see highlighted in light orange to dark orange, even brown, are the squares with a more strong verticalization process along that period. But as I said, we'll go back to it in other sessions, and specifically tomorrow morning, to tell you all this process and the challenge and the obstacles and points of inflection that we had to face along these years, and all the work that it demanded. Independently, something that it will be addressed independently this afternoon by a colleague, Professor Soli, is that also related to that, because there was a premise, as Christian mentioned, in terms of this new diversity and the build high gentrification, or how much high-rise buildings are also associated with gentrification processes. And it's something that's really, to me, it's really interesting how we can use it and to prove these hypotheses based on some observations of spectral analysis. And these are some examples of results of these cartographies, that the ones to which Christian made a comment, a reference. Because something that during all the project was really important, and sure, that if the city is a privatist and consumerist, or something public, and of course it's not only a matter of high-rise buildings, but the point is, to what extent, this would be true in some situations or in different situations. To what extent this is becoming representative, or is representative of a certain process, once we are saying that high-rise buildings are also commodities. The image to the left is a very well-known one, of a particular situation here in São Paulo. The community of Paraisópolis, to the left side of the image, and the wall that divided, and the high middle class, high-rise buildings, small swimming pool in each veranda, and so on. But that was, we wanted to discuss the issue of inclusiveness. It's really something to observe. In fact, inclusiveness, in the beginning of the project, to us in the Brazilian side, it became clear that, well, that's not a question. In the Brazilian society, is such a segregated, socially and spatially society, the question of inclusiveness is not a concept. It's something that is already there. It's in São Paulo. It's part of São Paulo. As, for instance, when we look at this image to the right, again, Paraisópolis and the high middle class, high-rise buildings in the border. And this, so the same area as this image. So inclusiveness was not for us, at least in the Brazilian side, in São Paulo, a concept, not a concept, a question. It was part of our urban tissue. It's there. Besides, what we mean by when we say socially sustainable cities and inclusive cities, are they? Is there any difference in the concept? Because inclusive cities, socially sustainable cities, should be cities in which all citizens are incorporated in decisions and policies. None, but one in particular, the poorest and most vulnerable should be left out. And all may both consider themselves and be considered by the others to be full citizens. Because the cities should be cities in which all citizens are incorporated in decisions and policies, right? One of the underlying principles of an inclusive city is a design structure that encompasses the concept of multi-objective planning based on economy, on social issues, on environmental issues, and culturally sensitive policies. But then we clearly understood that it was not a question to São Paulo, but maybe even more. Was it a question for this neoliberal city, or was just a speech of this neoliberal city? To what extent this process of urban fragmentation, exclusion, are result from global flows of capital? How much can we talk about more homogeneous and livable neighborhood communities? What do we find? So I'm talking about it just to mention that we move from the notion of inclusiveness to the notion of urban equity. We didn't, and that's something that's still under development. Urban equity is not something that we can say that is really studied in architecture or geography, or even it's a concept in social sciences. But that was a movement that, in terms of concept and the theoretical background, that we implemented along the project, and it's also related to the conference of next Thursday by Professor Carlos Tapia, when he addressed the idea of the decomposition of the notion of equity. It became important, the Highrise project. It was important since the beginning, which is in the title, living in an inclusive city. But this shift, this change of notion, of address, is really important. Because, okay, Highrise may contribute to inclusive and sustainable cities, a more dense and not compact city that in terms of urban morphology is rather than urban sprawl and so on. But what are all the conditions that influences the production of high-rises in the contemporary city and how much they are really promoting urban equity or urban inclusion or inclusiveness. Can we still talk about the totality of the city? São Paulo is, for instance, cities like São Paulo metropolis, they are made of, they're composed by heterogeneous territories. And some of the colleagues from other research centers have been studying it, Professor Eduardo Marques and others. And that's definitely true. We have not only a split social, physical city, it's split also socially. So, to what extent can we talk about it? Independent of the singularities of São Paulo and Lyon, because as we said before, it's not a matter of comparing both cities, but addressing issues of the configuration of both cities. To what extent they are submitted also, they are also examples of process of privatization of the urban space or the domestication of the urban space. In that sense, that definitions of high-rise building and living encompasses many, many questions. As Professor Montés explained it before, and even as he stated, the moment that we start to understand how ambitious we were in the beginning of the project, we start therefore to understand the complexity of the questions related to living in community, to the vertical city or the verticalization of the living environment as a place of living, but also as a commodity. And this will be addressed in many of, or basically in all the sessions and the panels that we will have. Beginning this afternoon or even Thursday afternoon, specifically about financialization and so on. And also in the final round table, because we will have two in the last day, one more related, one related to perspective, approach, a discussion about the consequences of the pandemic in terms of high-rise and high-rise and well-being of the citizens. And again, we are still in the middle of the pandemic, just a perspective session to speculate in the good sense about possibilities. But anyway, it seems that we are currently, there is a strategy of accumulation, capital accumulation that is made through the reproduction of the urban space. And it shows processes of this reproduction as an element of this capital accumulation. And high rises became one of these objects, one of these elements. And depending on the characteristics and dimension, the scale of the intervention, a little bit more than that. Just to finish, this is not specifically related to high rises, of course. It's, but again, in the context of the production of the contemporary city, something that became important to us and seems very important to understand this change, that we are not anymore a city of seat, work, and politics, but we live in a different neoliberal city that could be expressed by diagrams of entrepreneurial nature, city that express management and business not work on politics, not right to the city and public space, but more controlled cities and private space and so on. What's important here is, and that's something that to us became interesting during the project, was that this context, this theoretical framework, by means of which we developed the study related to vertical urbanism, has also to be understood. It was understood for us as the attempt to develop other modes of description and understand the space projection. And why? Because it would unveil to us aspects of this reproduction, in urban space, among which, and therefore we should be interested in the ones that bring light, that unfolds these processes, particularly the ones from more inclusive, more equitable, dense, vertical city, once the vertical urbanism and high rises are our object of studies. So our goal along the project, this was particularly also one of the goals, to develop new modes of description and new keys of reading this process. They are not, for sure, they are not finished, they are not concluded. And I would say that that was not even our intention. We were more interested in placing questions, in presenting questions, and in not being dogmatic, but trying to propose keys of understanding all this process, particularly by vertical urbanism and high-rise buildings. That's what I wanted to comment about. I don't know if Christian wants to add something before we just finish. Christian, do you want to add something?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. So what we have, I just a second. Let me just see it a little bit. What I bring to you is just some examples of results developed. Something that we developed, and we want just to show to you and leave it to you. They are already in the Symposium. The first one is a timeline of the vertical processes that happened to São Paulo, and that what we decided to do was not only a chronological and one related to facts of the urban legislation and iconic buildings and so on, and then we went for something different, also with the expectation that it could be reproduced for other cities. Again, this was part of the set of procedures of reading the territory. And then what you have here and what you have in here, if you click here, you go to I don't want to click it because I'm not really sure that I'll be able to come back to the screen. So I try not to, because then you go to, you'll be able to address the things. Either this is the timeline that it was devised to be printed. I mean, it's a huge one. but we want it to be collaborative. We want it to be, for instance, it takes aspects of the urbanization, the government power, social and cultural facts, and so on and so forth. And we want people to contribute to it. That's why we just bring it here. And it is kind of, when you click here, you go to a platform in Miro where you will be able to add your comments, you'll be able to add your contribution to the timeline. And what you have here, it's just when you click here, right? I think I made a mistake. Let me see. Oh, yeah. But when you click here, let me try. You come to here. And what you can see are some of the examples of things that we have been producing, the Kabbalah that we use, and some of the narratives that were developed that we just go very fast. These kind of things. And the other one is the timeline, as I mentioned to you, right? What you have here again is how to collaborate in the building of this timeline. And then there's a kind of a tutorial on how to do it. The idea is to, at the end of the symposium, we will be recompiling these contributions along the days, but hoping that we will have a different one, another one, and this is another. But I mean, you can also get there by scanning the QR code, right? Let me just come back. I have to come back here. And I'll stop sharing the screen. And that's it. Paulo, can you please, Christian? Here we are. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's what we had for the moment.
Yes, I think it might be interesting to go a little bit through the different sessions of the week, so that the people who are here will know what is going on and what are the different findings that they will be seeing, hearing about, because I think that's that might be of interest.
Do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, I can do it, but I do not have the slides of the thing, so I will have to talk. Or do you have them?
Oh, I can open I can do it by the website.
Oh, okay.
Share the screen again and do it by the website. Let me wait. Share the screen again.
I see you, not the screen.
No, I'm sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you see the screen, right? So when you go here, when you click here, you directly access the YouTube to watch the presentations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here are, when you come here, the program. So we are still in this one, the first one, the opening session, and the one when we presented some of the hypotheses, premises, and aspects of development of the high-rise project. This afternoon, we had another one. I live in the vertical city. I understand what Christian said. I think that I will go back and open each of the.
Yeah, well, if you have that, I have that on my side. I can go through the first panel today, which is the living vertical city, urban types, and social spatial changes. There will be 4 different presentations, and around different methodologies, different cities, and indeed different narratives or ways of tackling the subject. For instance, there will be first Mayra Daesh and Milena Sartori on recent transformation on urban structural axis areas, the case of Pinheiros, São Paulo, which is here field study on a very specific part of the city with the throughout analysis. Then there will be Louise Dorignon. Well, it will be my colleague Manoel who will speak on her behalf, because she is working and living in Melbourne, and well, it is night, the dead of night in Melbourne now, so she will not be able to attend. And it's view as spatial capital in the volumetric city. And here it's another case study, which is Melbourne. Another way of looking at things, which is through interviews of people, and with a specific point, we will go back tomorrow also, the view, which is one of the major findings of the project, and then another way with another absolutely the opposite scale, you might say. It's Giulio Pedrasoli on remote sensing, high-rise urban morphology and land value, and here it's from far above that the city is seen, but it helps and says a lot of things about the urban morphology, because well, it's a new methodology he devised, and he will indeed go through to explain. And last will be Asma Rescala, the contemporary verticalization of the city of Oran, Algeria, and its landscape effects. And here it's through another concept that we look at the city, which is the concept of landscape, through a study of the planning and the evolution of an Algerian city, which has quite a high verticalization rate, contemporary verticalization. So you see that we tried not to only focus on Lyon and São Paulo, but also to look at other cases in other parts of the world which are different. We wanted to have a de-Westernized gaze, so that also meant that we wanted to multiply the number of case studies, if possible. Indeed, it depended on the people who were embarked in the project at the beginning or during the project, and the type of study they were doing. So this is the first way of showing in the way in which we try to tackle the subject. Then tomorrow afternoon, it's the second panel in the afternoon on living the vertical city, daily life and social practices, and it begins with the Camila Moreno on social spatial practices, scala adjustments and interactions in the urban transformation process associated with verticalization in São Paulo. So, well, here it's about practices, as you see, and also interactions between people, and the scala adjustment are mostly at local level this time, which is the major focus of tomorrow, which is mostly the very local state. Then Paula Barros, high-rise and well-being, what does the evidence indicate? Well, here it's on also something which has been a little bit touched in the literature, which is health issues, but well-being is far beyond health issues. It's also the way high-rise dwellers interact with the city and with themselves inside and outside the building. Then Enora Asherito Garay using the elevator and experiencing high-rise living steps of an intimate urban itinerary. And here it's also the at different scales, inside, outside the building, and inside and outside the flat, with one thing which is at the core of the study of high-rise living, but hadn't been really very much studied before, which is the elevator. And it was based on a lot of quite long interviews with residents in high-rise in Lyon this time. So in a smaller city in which residential elevators exist indeed, but residential high-rises not so much. And then last, Geoffrey Mollet on experiencing the city as an atmosphere, which perspective from the production of the city. It's also a way of trying, like Enora and like both before, to know what is the specificity of high-rise living. So where does it reside, if I might say? So this really is something which is one of the results of the research. Then there will be conferences, and there is producing the vertical city, capital, and state. And here we come to the work, the task we wanted to do about financialization of the city and the production of the city. And the first would be Juana Carvalho on financialization, the verticalization in the metropolitan production of São Paulo. So this is, well, it says itself. I do not have to say a lot of more things with she worked with César Simoni. Then Julio Arroyo on verticalization in Santa Fe, Argentina, transformation of the unequal cities. Another case study on the production of verticalization here in South America, but in a city which has absolutely not the same size as São Paulo. So it is quite interesting to show the differences in scale, because that was our point in the study of financialization, to try and understand how these global processes are really working in a local process, local global negotiation, because it's not the same in New York and in Santa Fe, Argentina, or even in São Paulo. Then it's Manoel on TOD and residential high-rises in London, current developments, which is here the process is not only financialization, but linked to planning in very specific areas of planning in London, which are transit-oriented developments. And so to understand that case. And then with Beatriz Rufino, expansion and crisis in real estate restructuring, what's new, the diffusion and concentration and investment. So here also it's another stone to build the better comprehension of the local global negotiation in the financialization processes. And you see here that it's also one of the products of the project, but also the shortcomings of the project, because financialization has mostly been studied in South America, South American case, far more than in other cases, because we didn't find the sources, the people, and so on, to except a little bit in London, as you will see. So nothing really on Lyon or Melbourne or other cases. But well, so it's already an achievement to have been able to dwell on that. And then it's the last panel on April 13, reading the vertical city, cartographies, narratives, and infographies. Here it's a way of showing the different ways we translated the study. And so you have Marcel Fontin, who will work on identifying verticalization process and use of urban remote sensing and socioeconomic indexes. Well, here also it says it all. One specific methodology. Then, because this panel also underlines the different methodologies, Bianca Botea and Olivia Le Grip will talk about anthropological approaches to high-rise living, case studies in La Duchère, Lyon, and Brasov in Romania. Because on the French side, the French researchers have mostly dwelled on geographical, sociological, and anthropological studies. And here you will have some sort of comparative, or, well, put together two different case studies in social housing, or in places where social housing has been very important, as in La Duchère, which is one part of Lyon, and Brasov, a Romanian study with indeed communist residential high-rises. So this is quite interesting because it also documents not only the very rich new lifestyle, lavish lifestyles branded by developers for the rich and famous, or would be rich and famous, but also what happens in other places. That Loïc Bonneval, he will show a study which was conducted with another researcher, Aurélien Gentil, a little known urban form, the large luxury housing estates in Lyon, France, which is also one of the big points in of the research, because social housing is well known in Europe, in European countries like France, indeed, but large luxury housing estates were absolutely not studied. For Brazilian, it would seem very strange indeed not to know that this exists, because it is quite widespread. But in France, it was not. But it existed, and we just discovered that by studying Lyon, that there were large luxury housing estates in the central part of the city of the 1970s. Only a few, indeed. They were not like in Sao Paulo a lot, but 2, 3, 5, and we studied them to know what's happening. And then Manoel, indeed, last but not least, the high-rises, urban narratives, and social spatial cartographies on the different ways of showing the result of the research. And I am stopping now, and if you want to present the roundtables and the...
Okay. Just before the roundtable, well, I'll do this one. This one will be in the last day, as I said before. You know, it became clear to us it would be kind of nonsense to organizing all the symposium and not having attention that would address, even in a perspective way and a approach, speculative in the good sense, the questions related to the pandemic, and if we can emphasize any consequences or not. Paulo Barros will be also in a panel, second panel, if I'm not mistaken. She has been carrying a research, you know, all about the high-rises and well-being. That's her focus of research, and it has been working with some developing projects with some English colleagues in that area. Vinicius Neto is also a researcher, and he has a tradition related to high-rises, to urbanity, and also has a recent research where he's mapping all in cities, all the Brazilian cities with more than 100,000 inhabitants. What are the effects, the COVID effects, the pandemic, some social and economic data, and also we have been developing. We started a recent research with some Greek colleagues about vertical segregation, but also in communities, in slums, in the case of Brazil. right? And Nadia Somek is a well-known researcher. She was commended in France by her work. She has 2 decades of studying high-rise verticalization processes and so on. We have we will have also another roundtable, but before that, I just want to, this is coming Thursday, we will have 2 conferences. One by Professor Carlos Tapia from Seville, as I mentioned in my one previous comment, he'll be addressing the notion, the concept of equity, or aspects of the notion of equity, and this conference is entitled Decomposing Equity Between the Social and the Political, and Professor Tapia has been involved, just recently finished a European project about the study of metropolitan areas, urban equity, urban inclusivity, in that regard. And then we will also have, oh wait, why it doesn't go there? It has to come like this. Another conference, also Professor Julio Arroyo, that as Professor Christian Montés mentioned before. I mean, it's another look, another city, but specifically relate to one of the lines of research, one of the main goals of the project, that is a de-Westernized gaze into verticalization processes, or to vertical urbanism, contextualized in Buenos Aires, and observing even very recent urbanization processes in Buenos Aires in certain areas of the city. And the last, well, wait, here, it's the last roundtable. Well, the poster has not the names yet, but here we'll be discussing in a certain way issues presented before in the conference or in the symposium related to one question that we pose. We have built high gentrification. That's maybe one of the major questions of the symposium. And also, after this second and final roundtable, shorter one, we will be presenting, we will be introducing the Highrise project website. It will be presented by the developers, and also the final session, if we are still alive when we get there, we'll be there. Not this Thursday, next week, next coming Thursday, just to make some, also make some observations and comments about future activities, not of the project, but offsprings of the project itself. So that's it. These are the sessions.
Oh, Manoel, there is a question in the chat, because
Really?
you find the detailed program in the website. So is it available somewhere? The detailed program you showed here.
What? No, we can add. Oh, wait. We will. Okay, we will do it. We will have to add some links here for each of the session for each session for Christian. I don't hear.
Yes?
Oh, no, I listen to you again.
Okay. No, I didn't say anything except that the one remark that they couldn't find the detailed program in the website. So.
Oh, okay, no. It was my confusion because I went to the screen of the YouTube and there is a about 30-40 seconds gap. So I saw your image you were saying, but I was not listening to you. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. What we will do is to each of these sessions add a link, with the poster, with the information, right? Because when you come here, let me just see another thing. You come here. No, we have it already. We have it already. That was my when, for instance, the question was made by. I have to come here. Carolina. Here was where you find it. If you wait. When you come to thematic sessions, right? You are here. If you come, live in the vertical city, and you click here, it will open, no. Oh. If you click here, you have the title, you have the information of the curriculum and the title of the conference, or the talk, not the conference. But it's quite, okay. It's not the easiest way to get there. Then I think what I do is to, here in the program, in each one of these, for instance, in this panel, just to add a link where people can click and access the folder, right? Then that's what we will do. And then it will be easier to everybody. Is there any other questions in the YouTube, Christian? Because I'm not.
No, no.
No. There are no other questions.
No, Carolina thanks you. So that's
yeah. Let's do this. Well,
well, we are not going to keep on talking and talking and talking.
No. Of course not. I don't think that, and also because today it was not a matter of presenting something to be questioned about. It's more the general presentation of the project.
Yeah. And, then the question will come with the sessions.
Yeah.
Later today, this afternoon for you, and late afternoon for us.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody has some specific question about the project of the development. Okay, we are here to answer. Otherwise, we'll see you in the afternoon.
Yes. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you later, hopefully.
Yes, I will stop sharing my screen. Right, I stopped sharing. So I think that's it. No, Christian?
Yeah. So
thank you, everybody, for being up with us in this opening session. And we'll see you again in a couple of hours, in 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
Okay. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. You can stop recording, Paulo, and okay, Thais.